Thanks, Lisa. If you have your copy of Scripture, if you'd open up to John chapter 1, that's where we're going to be today. We are in a series called Speaking of Christmas. And we have been going through each of the four Gospels, and we have been looking at how the Gospel writer, each particular Gospel writer, has framed the Christmas story. So we've made it through Matthew and the history of Christmas. We've made it through Mark, and we've made it through Luke, and now we have John. And John does not just tell the earthly story of Mary and this simple baby that does change everything. Doesn't just recount the 90-some-odd mile journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem to find that there isn't any room in an inn for them. Doesn't just recount the fact that an innkeeper finally opens some space up for this birthing mother. It doesn't recount the fact that shepherds heard angels singing and came to find this baby king. Doesn't recount those shepherds taking off to tell the story, or the magi coming to visit this child. John tells a different story. He tells a cosmic story. He tells a story so big that it takes up the very creation of all things. John wants us to recognize not just the journey of Mary and Joseph, but the journey of Jesus himself. And so in John we find a powerful story. Now, if you've read the Gospel of John before, you know this, that John has kind of a unique framing of everything about faith. He is telling the gospel story to a Greek-speaking people, and he wants to make things simple. He wants them to understand. They don't necessarily have all of the history of the Jewish people that other gospels write to. They need instead the big picture of God and the big picture of who Jesus is and what is demanded of their life because of who Jesus is. And so his question is, do you believe? The word believe is mentioned, I think, 99 times in the Gospel of John, and his accounting of the story of Jesus, of the life and the miracles, the death and the resurrection. Central to his teaching is this idea, do you believe? Now, at Christmas time, we start asking that question a lot, don't we? I remember a few years ago in a coffee house that I visited, they had plastered across their windows and those neat vinyl stickers, they have the word believe. It's almost a mandate. Believe. The question is this, is what are we to believe in? I live in a house with small children. Do you know what question they're asking this time of year? Yes. Is Santa Claus real? Mommy, our 7-year-old asked Liz, my wife, do you believe in Santa Claus? She didn't ask me. I think she's convinced because I am a man of great faith that I believe. I believe. And so it's a tricky line, isn't it? This line of, do you believe? What do you really believe? Do you believe in the miracle of Christmas? So we spent a great deal of time this week explaining the story of St. Nicholas and how God so touched his life that he became this generous human who wanted children to receive something on this day when we celebrate the birth of Jesus. And so I do believe. Now, that question, however, from John is a much deeper, more meaningful question. Do you believe? I think it's a valid question. He's speaking to a group of people who believe in a lot of things, as I am speaking to a group of people who truly, genuinely believe a lot of things. But a claim throughout the Gospel of John is you can believe a lot of things and still not believe in the most important thing that will transform your life and give you new birth, new life, a constant theme throughout this gospel that John presents. Do you believe in new life in the here and now, that a life can be transformed, that your lost and broken self can be found and receive new life? That's the message of the Gospel of John. And so here's the big idea I want to share with you today. Believing in Jesus is a deep work in our heart. Yes, it's a deep work in our mind to believe, but it is a life-altering, heart-changing experience when we believe in Jesus. It results in helping us break free from the human condition of brokenness and loneliness, and it gives us a new life. So let's together read the Gospel of John and the incarnation account that he presents in chapter 1, starting at verse 1. And we'll read through verse 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The word here, if you don't know, is Jesus himself, the very spoken word, the creation. Jesus himself has crafted the landscape, the mountains and the oceans and the green. He shaped every animal and every human. It was Jesus that brought life into all things. And John chapter 1 verse 1 tells us that Jesus had no beginning, that Jesus has always been co-equal with God, has been present in all things. That Jesus is not a created being born as a baby. Instead, he was always present, always with the Father. And so it says this, verse 2, he was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So John, speaking to a dualistic Greek culture, and very much like our culture, by the way, good and evil is presented in the very first few verses. You believe in good and evil? You believe in a spiritual battle. John sets up so eloquently, so simply, that we live in a world that is filled with good and evil, but he makes a powerful Christmas promise, a miracle promise at the very beginning. Darkness cannot overcome the light. So I want you to know this as we head into Christmas here in the next few days, that though our world seems so dark and depraved, and though you may feel overwhelmed with the darkness of grief or loneliness or fear or doubt or struggle, I want you to know this. Darkness cannot overcome the light of Jesus. Do you believe that Jesus is the light of the world? The light that shines in the darkness, that illuminates our way, that illuminates what's right, that guides us? Do you believe? Verse 6 says this, there was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. Verse 9. The true light, Jesus, that gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or of husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Wow, what a beautiful, powerful portrait of Christmas. I think it's a powerful portrait, a picture from God's very own eyes. Not from the human perspective, but instead from God's perspective. This is what Christmas really is. That Jesus, the one who framed and built and crafted, stepped down, did not surrender his divinity, but instead stepped into the form of a baby, the weakest, smallest, frail. A baby that was at the will of human beings. A baby that represented the frailty of humankind. Do you believe that God is willing to humble himself and come be amongst us, to dwell? I love this picture, this last picture there of verse 14. That God became flesh and blood, and he tabernacled with us. For the Jewish audience that may have been listening in, they were saying, oh, remember when we were a wandering people, and God gave us a tabernacle, and there in that tent he dwelled, and we saw his glory. We saw a pillar of cloud, and we saw the fire, and it led us. And here again, God is amongst us to guide us, to lead us. And they're saying, wow, that God would come again to live with us. This is a miracle. Do you believe? I want us to focus for the rest of our time together. There's so much richness in these 14 verses that we could spend months on them. But today, here's what I want to do. I want to focus in. I want to focus in here on verse 11. Can you stick up that next verse for me? I have highlighted, and I want you to pick out what I have highlighted here for a moment. He says this: He, Jesus, came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. So here, I think John is talking about the created order. He's talking about all people. John said that by him all things, all people, everything was created by him. And he came to them, and all that he created, they did not receive him. They saw him, but they did not take him in and receive him. And then it goes on, yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. That's what I want to talk about today. How do we become, and how are we children of God? Because I have this belief, as Dr. Dar mentioned, there are some of you, you're here, and you came to love somebody or appease somebody, but you don't know what you believe about this whole Jesus thing. And I want to take a moment, and I want to give you the opportunity to receive the greatest gift ever given. I mean this. I really genuinely believe this to the depths of my being, that Jesus Christ is the greatest gift ever given. It says here, to those who believed in his name, he gave. We often at Christmas celebrate giving gifts, don't we? Everybody done your gift giving? You went out, you shopped, you've got your things, and you're planning on wrapping them and offering them as a symbol of your love to another person. This gift has to mean something. I don't know about you, but I sometimes struggle with this idea of what do I give that shows my true gratitude. You may not know this, and forgive me because some of you I've done this for. Gift cards don't necessarily show one's heart. Have you noticed this? They're a nice gesture, but when a gift is given from the heart, you show that you know a person's longings and needs and wants. And so I've given, and forgive me, I've given lots of gift cards because I don't always know how to express. But how many of you have ever received a gift before and you thought when you received it, this person doesn't even know me? I can't believe they got me this. I hate this. This isn't even in the realm. And you thought, wow, that didn't feel so genuine. Well, God gave. Probably most famous Bible verse ever. Later on in the book of John, you know, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave. The idea here is that God knows us so deeply, he knows us so intimately that he is giving us exactly what we need. You may not know this today, but God wants to give you exactly what you need with pinpoint precision. He wants to give to you today what you need. Now, I'm not talking about a new Corvette, or I'm not talking about $1 bazillion. I'm talking about he knows you intimately inside, and he knows what you deeply need. And he wants you to receive the gift of Jesus. He says this, yet to all who did receive. What does it mean to receive? What if the package just stayed underneath the tree and you didn't open it? You ever had one of those awkward experiences? We had an awkward experience this week. We gave a person a gift, and our hope was that they would unwrap it in front of us, and that we could see their eyes light up with joy as we gave the gift. And when we asked them, do you want to open it? They said, no. And we felt like, man, did we do something wrong? But they took it with them. And we don't have a clue what they thought of the gift that we offered them. We don't know if they received it. They may have, on the way home, thrown it out the window. Or stopped by the care center and dropped it off. I don't know. We aren't sure they received the gift. The request of God at Christmas is, will you receive? Will you take in? Will you open? Will you understand what I've given you? To understand what God has given you, you have to reflect now on this passage from John. This beautiful passage that God himself, in the form of Jesus, humbles himself. This is where the picture of Luke gets so beautiful, that the God of all creation, who made all things, royalty, eternal royalty, steps into a manger, to a feed trough, to a stable, to a cave, to the lower story of a house, where all sorts of visitors have left their critters to be cared for this week of taking the census. They move into a crowded little stable. They shove things aside, and there the King of Glory breathes oxygen and spits up mucus and coughs and smells the stench of everything around him. God humbled himself and came to show himself a lowly servant. I don't know about you, but I think this is miraculous. If you were God, what would you do? If you had all power, would you just wipe things out? Would you just make things your way? Would you give people a choice, or would you tell them this is how it is? God, in his desire for us to love him back, gives us the opportunity to receive the glory King in the form of a baby, so that we can understand his love for us more deeply. Receiving Jesus means taking Jesus into your life for what he is. Receiving Jesus means taking Jesus in for who he really is, not what you want him to be. I think sometimes in our world, in our culture, we think about a kind of loving coexistence with Jesus. I know I need him to save me so that someday I can go to heaven. And in a loving coexistence, we think, go on, move in, but don't play your music too loud. Don't get in my way and don't mess up my life. I have plans. Clean up after yourself, Jesus. When, in reality, when we receive him and we ask him in, he becomes what we need most. And it's our calling, like him, to humble ourselves. To lower ourselves and say, I need a Savior. You're my Savior. I need a leader because I live in a dark world. And in my own righteousness, I have just filthy rags. I need a leader to guide me to true righteousness. I need a provider. I may have all the earthly green stuff I need, but I need somebody to provide for me the relationship healing that I need. I need somebody, a God who can cure cancer. I need a God who can put his loving hands of protection over me. I need a sweet counselor in my time of need. I need an author to rewrite my story. So I give you authority, Jesus, to rewrite my story, and I'll do what you say. I need a king, because left to my own rule, I keep messing things up. Now, we may not want to admit it, but that summarizes each of us, doesn't it? We need to humble ourselves. He came to his own, but his own didn't receive him. Can I ask you a question today? This isn't for those of you who are here seeking or here at the will of somebody else. This is for those of you who came to worship. You are his own. Do you know him? Do you recognize his movement, his direction, his guidance? Are you humbling your heart to say, God, in this Advent season, in your coming, I recognize that I need you. I'm going to receive you each day, fresh and new. I will receive you. The second thing this morning is this. Receive. But believing in Jesus is stepping out of the darkness into the light. Believing Jesus is stepping out of the darkness of this world, the darkness of your thoughts, the darkness of your circumstances, the darkness of what you have been taught here, and accepting the light of Jesus for how it pours in and opens your eyes to new realities, to be changed. I was thinking this week about John 3. And a few moments ago, I cited the verses from 3:16 that most people know, and that God gave himself. But later on in verse 18 and 19, it says this, whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. This contrast, this dualism throughout the book of John, this darkness and light, is repeated over and over. This prologue, this beginning to the book of John, is kind of played out in the story of Jesus. That Jesus comes into the world, that people reject him. That some see the light and are transformed, and Jesus gives his life for them and is resurrected, and they follow him. Believing in Jesus is stepping out of the darkness into the light. It's repenting and saying, God, I have gone my own direction, and now I'm going to follow you no matter what that means. I believe. But just like children who start turning a certain age, as they struggle to believe in the kind of stories of Christmas, So it's sometimes hard for Christians to believe that Jesus is. It's hard for our world to believe that Jesus really is who he claims to be. And so there are these challenges to presently believing. I like those verses there in 1 John because that word believe is a present tense. In the Greek, it means it's happening right now. It's not a thing of the past. It's not a thing of the future. It is for us to be believing here and now, that our life would show that we're believing. But the challenge, I think one challenge for us is this, is that believing Jesus means humbling myself. Receiving him in humility. As he came down, I now humble myself. Here's what I know about most of us. I include myself in this. I grew up in a Christian tradition that emphasized righteousness and living right, and those things are so vital and so important. But sometimes it was stressed. So much to the detriment that I didn't know how much I needed the power of the Holy Spirit to help me walk in that righteousness. How much I needed to believe that God would empower me and give me strength. That I could accept Jesus and he would empower me. John goes on to tell this in his story. John chapter 5, verse 43 and 44. He says, I have come in my Father's name, and you do not accept me. But if someone else comes in his own name, you will accept him. How can you believe since you accept glory from one another, but do not seek the glory that comes from the only God? I think this is one of our challenges. Can I just be honest? I think one of our challenges is by human nature, we want glory. We want to be right. We want to be praised. And we look for things that make us look good and look better. But at Christmas, God humbled himself, and he came in the form of a baby in a lowly manger. And he could have come in on a majestic, heavenly white horse. He could have brought the legions of angels. He could have wiped things out and left only the righteous remnant. But he didn't choose to do that. He came as a gift. And he asks us, like him, to accept this gift of humility and become humble. To believe means I become humble. That I can never be smart enough. I can never have enough information. I can never on my own be righteousness. Instead, I need a righteousness that only he can impart to me. And that's why God came in this miracle baby. The second thing is this, is believing in Jesus means being satisfied with Jesus. Let me ask you this question, just heartfelt, honest question. Is Jesus all you need? Really all you need? I believe, and Scripture teaches that Jesus is genuinely all that we ever need. And yet, in this world, we are taught and we are guided, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. Sometimes it's almost a hypnotic thing that's given to us from childhood that we need more, that we should get more, that if we're doing right, more comes our way. But that's not the way of Jesus. Jesus says this. He says this in John chapter 6. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But as I told you, you have seen me, and still you do not believe. Now, as we start inching towards a new year, some of you do think of New Year's resolutions, the aspirations for a new year, how next year will be better than this year. Can I offer one suggestion for a Christmas gift and a New Year's resolution? the meditating resolution that Jesus Christ is genuinely all you need. That the next new car or the next place or the next relationship, the next accolade, the next trophy, the next whatever it might be, will never satisfy your soul's deepest longing. That only Jesus Christ can genuinely, truly satisfy our deepest longing. The miracle of Christmas is this, that God gave Jesus the gift that we all so desperately need. The question is, will you receive it and then believe? Receive it, open it, and say, God, I can't believe what you've given me. I believe that Jesus is all I need. He is the way. He is the truth. He is the life. Would you humble yourself and would you follow him? I'd like to close by reading to you this quote. It says this, the moment you believe in Jesus, the moment you receive him for who he really is, in that moment, he gives you not only new birth, but the right and authority as a sinner to lay claim to your inheritance as a child of God, to become legally, as it were, with due authority, what you are by virtue of a new birth, because you were born of God.